Hi, it's Scott from One Man Band here. Say, before we begin the next Masters of the Musiverse series, I want to talk to you about a few things. My channel in the last month has had some really awesome growth, and I want to say thank you to everyone that has subscribed. If you haven't subscribed right now, click down below, please. It would really be helpful. And the other thing that would be helpful is if you know somebody else that might enjoy these conversations and some of the other content I put out there, share this with them so that we can continue to grow this channel together. The other thing that you could do if you're interested in helping on a different level is some financial support. I've got two links down below. One's a GoFundMe page and one's something new. It's a Patreon page. The GoFundMe has supplied me with $2,000 already, and I've been able to buy some different audio equipment. Actually, this GoPro camera that I'm doing this introduction on was purchased with that. And there's a few other things that I really need to get before this thing really takes off. So if you'd like to investigate that a little more, click on the links below. This next conversation is with two teachers that just finished their first year teaching. And I was really surprised by how mature they were in their conversation after just a year. I feel like I didn't really get there until I was like 5 or 10 years into my career. So I feel really great about the new teachers that are out there. In this interview, we talk about the successes and the hurdles of the first year, and they're able to look back at it and give some tips and suggestions for teachers that are getting ready to do their first year. We also talk about school culture and the importance of eating lunch. You have to watch the video to understand that. And as well as bandroom culture and how we instigate change. This is actually part one of two because this conversation I had with these two went on for an hour, and I want to keep these videos to a half hour. So if you like this conversation, be prepared down the road here for part two coming out. Have a great day.
So, Rebecca, can you tell us your name, your school district, grades? Just a breakdown of what you're teaching.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rebecca Elliott. I teach 5 through 12 band in Fertile, Minnesota at Rural Beltrami. There's about 460 kids K through 12 in the school, and there's about 110 kids in band.
All right. And Raphael?
Hi, I'm Rafael Silva. I teach 5 through 12 band in Crosby, Minnesota. The district is called Crosby Arlington School District. I teach at an elementary school and then at a secondary school. There are about 500 students in the district, and about 110 of them are in band.
All right. So, Raphael, this next question, I'm going to go right to you first here. I'm just wondering if you can think about this last year that you just went through, and what do you feel like was the biggest hurdle? And let's maybe say besides the distance learning aspect, because that was such an outlier. So what was your biggest hurdle this year?
My biggest hurdle was definitely working with beginning band students, and specifically with my schedule, I would finish the day at the elementary school. So just being able to exert so much energy at the end of the day was so tough for me because I was already exhausted from the day. So, but that got better throughout the year. But that was definitely my biggest hurdle, just the end of the day and then working with beginning band students.
Yeah, I remember those days too, especially early in teaching when you get run down so quick.
Yeah.
Did you do anything? Did you try to adjust anything to like help you maintain energy through the day?
Well, yeah, I actually had my lunch break was in between. So I'd have lunch and then go to the elementary school, but I'd have some time for lessons. The days that I didn't have lessons, I would just, that was kind of cheesy, but I would just think positive things and just like kind of just pump myself up to work with those students because they're the ones who need it the most. They're the ones who need to be excited for band, and
yeah,
those are the students you want to put the energy to.
yeah.
That's kind of what I did.
I don't think that's cheesy at all. I think the things that in education we often don't pay enough like credence to is rest, getting sleep, and having time in your day to prep for the next thing coming. So I'd say keep on doing that when you can. What about you, Rebecca? Biggest hurdle this year?
Well, there were many, but the biggest one It's kind of similar. I replaced a longtime director, and I also, for the first 5 months of my first year, I taught 2 through 5 elementary music on top of my already contracted position. So I had the opposite. I had all my elementary kids in the morning, and then I had to like get enough energy to go in front of my high schoolers and sell them something positive and happy that they were maybe not so interested in at the beginning because I was not their longtime director. So there was like a mix of trying to uh, build rapport with my high schoolers and like trust, like build that trust that I can teach them things about band too. And then also making it through the day.
Yeah.
It gets better, you know, and I know you probably get told that a lot, but it does get better. So our bodies get used to it, and we also find ways to, you know, keep ourselves healthy and well rested. So again, in retrospect on your year, was there a part of your job that surprised you the most? Rebecca, I'm going to ask you that one first.
Yeah, how important organization is. Like we all have our own organizational types and styles and processes, and mine is completely different than yours and all of that. But when you anytime you start a new job and you're taking over for what the other person had, it was just very different than what I had that I do for organizational purposes, and it made a huge difference when I had all my papers and prepared for the class, or if I didn't.
What about you, Raphael? Anything that really surprised you once you actually got into this job?
Yeah, same as Rebecca. I mean, organization is key, and I would say I'm a pretty organized person, but just staying on top of organization is important. Some things that I wrote down were how much time I had to put in on my syllabus, scheduling band lessons, and just how much time planning goes for contest.
Yeah.
That was a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. To add even more, just the fact that I was maybe, and you hear about this in college about how you spend like 5% of your time on the podium actually doing music, and the other 95% of the time you're doing just about everything else. But it's true, and it just was mind-boggling. So many emails.
Yeah.
Emails, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, for anybody that might be listening to this in the future, you know, part of that email problem is because we had a pandemic that struck us at the end of this last school year, and so for 3 months we weren't in school. And I don't know about you guys, my email like exploded during that time, especially in the beginning. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about school culture next. And I'm wondering if you were thoughtful about how you integrated yourself into the school culture, or if it just kind of happened naturally. So, Raphael, is there anything that you in particularly did to try to integrate yourself into the school culture?
I mean, it kind of happened naturally. I would eat lunch with the teachers. I mean, I had the option to just eat lunch in my office, but I felt like it was important to get to know my colleagues. And some other things that we did, I mean, besides pep band, that was a big one. Pep band is a huge thing in Crosby. A lot of people just come to just hear the band. I mean, I think it's just small town vibes kind of thing, which I think is cool. And we also played at our Special Olympics, which I thought was pretty special, and a lot of people enjoyed that. So besides that, I mean, just getting to know the other teachers, and I think it's important to get to know other students too who aren't in band.
Yeah, and I think that I think that eating lunch with teachers is such a big deal. I didn't do that for the longest time because I was like, I'm so busy, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. No one understands how busy I am.
Yeah.
And then I started eating lunch just a few years ago, like thoughtfully every day I went into the lunchroom, and I realized a few things. One, I really like my coworkers. Two, they're just as busy as I am. And three, this was such an important thing for me to make connections with other teachers. It helps me in my job, and it just, as a person, it's great. So what about you, Rebecca? Anything in particular when we talk about school culture?
Well, for me, being integrated into the school culture, that's something that I'm going to be working on a lot more this next year. I was just so overwhelmed. That's the best way to put it at the beginning. And like needing everything to go absolutely perfect that I spent all of my time and energy on my job
Yeah.
and less time making relationships with like my coworkers, for instance. So it wasn't until like February that I actually started eating lunch with the choir director even. And just how much of a change that had, just because I could talk to somebody who actually understood what I was saying. And believe it or not, for the last 5 months, they were going through the same things. And I totally missed an opportunity to like get advice or just share so I can like recharge and get going for the rest of the day. So that's one thing that I'm most excited about is I actually moved into Fertile this year too. So I lived out of town and I had a long commute. So that was very hindering. I couldn't go to all of the sporting events like all the other teachers because I lived out of town. So I'm excited to actually like jump in.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that like we all have this commonality like with lunchtime and how important of a time this can be. And I actually know a lot of directors that, because I picked up my cue from them, that would just eat by themselves because they felt like that 20 minutes or whatever was better to go answer email. When I think in reality for our mental health and for everything, get away from that. Even if you're talking about school stuff, get away from the computer screen, get away from your island that you're living on. Yeah, that's interesting. Might have to write a book that's called like Just Go Have Lunch, and it's all about
Yes.
mental health and socializing with other teachers. So we have a school culture, but also in our programs we have culture like that. We usually try to manicure and make the way we want it. And I think a lot of times it doesn't matter if you're a first year teacher or, you know, in my circumstance, I had been teaching for like 7 or 8 years, most of that time in that band program as a junior high band director. And then I took over the high school and I still had to, even though I was part of the culture, it was still a shift. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if maybe just first of all, the quick answer, did you feel like you had to work on culture change within your program, Rebecca?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Raphael?
Yep, I did. A lot of things just they weren't used to that I wanted them to do, and it was just kind of like there was just a lot of tension at the beginning of the school year because of that. And it's either they beat you or you just have to just I don't know. It was a difficult thing to overcome and just go through.
I think this is a really important conversation, and because you said there was tension, and I love looking at things in retrospect. So can we talk about that for a second? And like talk about like why do you feel like there was tension? Like what things were you noticing and what things that they didn't like?
Well, one thing that so all through my middle school, high school, and even college, there was no chair place. There were no chairs. Like there wasn't a first chair, second chair, third chair, which I think it's fine. Like anyone can play a first, second, or third part whenever. It's not that big of a deal to me. So first couple weeks of school, I give out new music, and I assign parts not by part 1, part 2, part 3, but just or not by chairs, but by parts. Like everyone's gonna get a first, second, or third, or whatever. And one student specifically, he was a senior, and he would always just get the first parts for he was a cornet player. He would always just get the first parts, and he was like, "Oh, why do I have a second and third part?" I was like, because you're going to play a second and third part. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to. And then I tried. So he got really upset about that. And other students did too. But then I just had to explain my philosophy on that because to me, it's not that big of a deal. Like, that's just how I was brought up in the band world. And that's just how I want to do it too. And another thing was switching around between pieces. Like they weren't used to that. They're like, what do you mean I have to get up? What do you mean in a concert I have to get up and just switch? I'm like, That's exactly what I mean. Like, it's not, so that was just, I don't even know
It,
how to explain it. What they have to do is just go watch a professional band or just go watch a college band and have them, if they see them do it, then they'll do it. Cause then they'll have experienced, uh, watching that happen instead of me just telling them, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's just something that takes time.
It's interesting you say that because again, I've been here for a long time. Um, you know, my kids accept like the way that we do things. That is one thing they still kick back on is they
Yeah.
don't want to have to stand up and like, and I think part of it is something I'm going to work on this year because I think part of it is they don't see why the first clarinet should always be in that specific spot or
Oh,
and the seconds and the thirds here, you know, and same with the trumpets. And so I think I'm going to work on educating them on why this is important.
yeah.
Because I think, you know, I think a lot of times with kids, like with the headbutting comes because they're actually telling you, I don't understand this. Right. And so if we can work on, okay, I'm going to educate you then on why this is. I find most often they're like, oh, okay, yeah, now I accept this. So what about you, Rebecca? Like or band culture shift? What did you feel? What changed?
so there was my predecessor had been at that school for over 30 years. So my current students' parents had him. And so there was just a lot of things that had continued for 30 years because they worked super well for him. And so I came in and I wanted to make it my own because that's the whole idea is to create an environment and space that you feel proud about and feel comfortable with. And so there was also a lot of pushback, headbutting, and tension for me and my students as well. And I actually found if all the small things like getting up and moving in between pieces, standing up at a concert when you're finished playing a piece, uh, concert dress, like really small things to me caused a lot of ruffled feathers. But the biggest tension actually came from I realized much later in the year, much later, not when it was actually useful, was that I was getting defensive and felt like them being upset about something or not liking one of my ideas or whatever was a personal attack on myself. And Dr. Howard is going to be so mad because he's told us so many times it's not personal, but that's what it was. I was taking their reaction to change and them being uncomfortable with not knowing what this new thing will be like. And I was getting really defensive about it. So once I stopped doing that and just said, well, tell me why you think we should do this or why you think we shouldn't. And actually having a conversation, oh my goodness, that was the biggest thing. Having conversations with my students, having that open door of come talk to me about anything that you're upset about or not upset about or what you don't like. And I can either tell you, yeah, your feelings are completely valid, but I'm not going to change it. Or, yeah, your feelings are completely valid. Maybe we'll change something. So that was a big thing.
Yeah, that's a big lesson to learn. And probably one we all will keep on learning too is, I mean, I think this is even with other adults that like people's reactions to things are so rarely about me and they're about the situation or, you know, what happened earlier in the day for that person. And so coming to, you know, understanding of that and being able to work through things together is a big thing. And a really important thing, I think, for our band cultures. There's a lot being talked about this right now. And you guys came from a program with a guy who's, you know, an expert at this, at developing culture and making sure people have a voice. And I think that we should reflect on that experience of how important that was for me to have a voice when I was a member of the ensemble. And now how can I create that for the ensemble I'm in with high schoolers, because it's probably a little bit different, right? But I'll just tell you like some things that I have done is probably the biggest thing was this last year is I created a pep band council. and the pep band decides like what music's going to be played, and what the t-shirt's going to look like. And there were a lot of things that didn't go well this first year I started it, but I did really feel like it was a great opportunity to just let the kids have a voice. And so often, like when I let them choose the music, I'm sitting back, they're discussing, they're talking, whatever, they come up with the music, and I'm like, yeah, that's the stuff I would have picked too. Like. So when it comes to culture shift, if you could go back to day one, how would you approach it differently for your band room? And Rebecca, I think I'll ask you this one first.
Yeah, so I would totally do day one differently. First of all, I would just sit for 45 minutes and realize how short of a time period that is. Okay, 45 minutes is not a lot of time. And two, I gave a syllabus to my kids, and that was the first time that they had ever received a syllabus for band. And so I did not anticipate the shock and just shock of that they went through receiving it. And we actually ran out of time and didn't even play our instruments on the first day. And I regret that immensely. I wish I would have had them play. I wish I would have given them the piece of paper, said, read this, turn it in by the end of the week. Here's a couple important things. Let's play. So we're going to do that this year. But
Sure.
that was a big thing.
Okay, what about you, Raphael? If you go back in time, your day one, and thinking about how the struggles you had with shifting culture, is there anything you would approach differently from the beginning?
Yeah, definitely don't have a syllabus on day one. Like, that's what I did. I gave out a syllabus, and I don't know. I think it was kind of awkward for them and myself because I don't that it was just kind of boring. It was a boring first day, and that's definitely not the kind of impression you want on your brand new students, you know. So I think next year definitely just lay. I mean, maybe the syllabus can take a week to explain if it's like little segments at a time, just to make it more engaging and not boring. Definitely play the first day. Play every day in band if you can. I think.
Yeah. I actually wait until October to do my syllabus, um, because like you guys say, I want to get to playing as quick as I can. I don't play the first day because I guess I have found that a lot of times instruments aren't in school the first day. And so it's a little like for at least, for my school, it's been a little bit of a conflict. And I kind of want everyone to be playing on the first day. So I do a lot of ensemble building, like games and stuff, and it's not like the typical icebreaker thing. Wendy Barden actually has a great book that I don't have here. I'll try to share the title with you because it's great little games you can play that are directed more towards like ensemble building and stuff like that. I think is really important because I've always felt like my most rewarding musical experiences have been when I'm connected to people. I played with some great musicians that I wasn't connected with that, was fun to play with, but the really like deep connection I have with people and how rewarding that is to do music together. So that you can kick that off on day one.
To add to that, the idea of building community, I knew that was something I wanted in my program. Having relationships with my students, them having good relationships with each other, and just having that community that was more process based than product based. But I can confidently tell you that I did not do anything really to help that until around December, just because I didn't have a good idea on how to do that in a way that would be well received by them because it was so different than what they were used to. And it wasn't until we had our holiday party at the end of the year that all of a sudden walls went down and relationships were made. And a couple of weeks later, we had a winter concert, and it was the most amazing thing ever. And they actually, after we played O Manu Mysterium, they're like, oh my gosh, I got goosebumps. Like that one time, every time you say you get goosebumps, I actually got goosebumps that time. I'm like, yes, isn't that exciting?
Nice.
And so realizing that you don't have to like get down into the details and rehearse every single day all the time. but like having opportunities for them to enjoy what they're doing, being in that space with you, being in that space with others, uh, something I would like to implement even more.
Yeah, and I think that goes to speak to where a lot of music educators feel like, yes, music is a very important thing that I need to teach, but I'm also raising young humans, and I'm trying to teach them how to navigate the world, and doing it through a quality music education. But even for me, I think that's a priority for me. Like I would rather have you be an excellent human being than you be an excellent musician. Now hopefully I can get both. And so I personally spend a lot of time on culture. You had kind of mentioned earlier, Rebecca, the idea that my office door is open to you. You come and talk to me. And sometimes that'll be in the form of like, hey, Mr. Cumero, I need this copy of this. Can you copy this for me? And sometimes it will be more in the vein of, I'm going through a really big life struggle right now. I don't have an adult in my life I can talk to except for you. And so that's an important thing that we get to provide for our students. And I think, again, especially as music educators, because we see kids for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and can really build deep relationships. Rebecca, so you've just finished your first year of teaching, and I'm wondering if you have like a single piece of advice you would give to a teacher that's getting ready for that first year.
Yeah, it's go forward with grace. That's kind of my mantra that I'm going with, because there's going to be always something that you didn't want to happen, or you didn't plan on happening, or you didn't expect or need to happen. All of those things are going to happen many times. And so going forward, like just keep moving on, because it happened, learn from it, move forward, go forward, and then with grace, because you're a human being, they're all human beings, they're smaller human beings than you. So just being forgiving to yourself and to others, and just saying, okay, moving on now, gotta keep going. That's what I would say. That's what I needed to hear.
I think that's a really good point, because as teachers, we want to be reflective to see what worked. And a lot of times when we're in that process, we beat ourselves up. So we need to be reflective in order to learn from our experiences, but moving forward, letting ourselves, forgiving ourselves for not knowing how to best do this thing maybe. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And Raphael, what about you? A single piece of advice for a first year teacher?
I would tell them that relationships are the most important thing right away. I feel like relationship building should always come before the music making. And an example of that is, like you said, once you feel connected to someone in the ensemble, if you have that, you have that connection to someone, you care about the person you're sitting next to. The music making just becomes a lot better. So aiming towards that, and just being able to deal with failure, because you'll fail a lot your first year. A lot of things will go not as planned, and it's good to be reflective every day about your day, like you said. Just be reflective in general. So
yeah, I like that idea of that connection, how important that is for us, because I think of students that, like, I always think of trumpet players for some reason when I think of this, but like students that don't really care the difference between F and F sharp, right? And so they'll over and over again in rehearsal, you'll hear that. But if you build that relationship of people, they start caring more, because they're seeing how they're affecting others. They don't care about F or F sharp, and they're okay with that. But this person does. I'm going to be paying a little closer attention. I think we see that shift in ways like that. So I think that's an important thing to point out. So now, as you're preparing for your second year, what's your biggest concern, Rebecca?
Besides the current pandemic, it would be one thing I'm focusing a lot on is the community building, because I've heard them, because that was a big thing I was concerned about. It was like, what do they sound like? What music can they play? What am I going to be able to do? Are we going to struggle playing this? I know how they play now. I know what they sound like. I know all those things. But it's that community thing of what things can I add in the school year to make it more fun? What are we going to do on the first day again? What I want to like implement a few new things, either like section leaders or more student leadership roles. And so how can I integrate that into the thing? It's totally community based. Even like decorating my classroom, I spent so little time doing that, and it makes a difference. So I'm spending a lot of time thinking about that, creating an environment visually for them that is exactly what I want it to be, welcoming.
Yeah. And Raphael, what about you? What's your biggest concern headed into your second year?
My biggest concern heading into the second year would be, now that I know all of the students, I know the incoming fifth graders even. I mean, I know all of the students I'm going to have next year. My biggest concern is what to do now, like how to move forward. Now that I know them, now that I know how each of them react to certain things, what kind of personality they have, now it's how do I move forward for them to be able to, for me to be able to have the ensemble that I want with them at every age group, every grade level. How do I how do I make them build connections with each other? How do I build that culture? Like you said, we've been talking about culture a lot today.
The importance of subscribing. The video we're about to go into, I want to do the. Hi, Scott from One Man Band here. It helps the validity of my channel. Validity. The video that I'm awesome, and I want to say I appreciate everyone that has subscribed.